Hello, welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us this evening for St. Ben's at Home. Tonight we welcome a special guest who's no stranger to St. Ben's at Home, President Brian Bruess. Brian, how are you this evening?
I'm doing great. It's a privilege to be here and just thrilled to join the At Home at St. Ben's crowd.
Well, welcome back. It's been a little over a year since you first joined us for St. Ben's at Home. And I think it's fair to say that a ton has happened. So let's unpack what a ton actually is in higher ed years. So what have you been up to since we saw you last?
First of all, it's going to take more than an hour and a half to unpack a ton.
We only have an hour,
Yeah.
so.
We've been, so as you know, so actively busy on tackling the most pressing issues of the day and really focusing on enrollment, but also building a strong strategic plan. We'll talk about that in a little bit, I'm sure. But really, the first year has been about meeting and greeting and listening and paying attention to what the community is looking for. And it's been a lot in 1 year. And I still ask the question, if it's 2 colleges, do you get credit for 2 years for every chronological year?
It's like higher ed dog years.
Yeah, do you or not?
I'm not in charge of anything like that, but I'm guessing the answer is probably no.
It's been a great year with lots of activities and already well into year 2 and couldn't be more excited.
So it's been, let's start with some fun things that have gone on. So you've officially been inaugurated. So tell us a little bit about that celebration, maybe explain a little bit about what inaugurations are kind of for and about. And it was a really fun week on our campuses. So what were some highlights for you?
Well, I would say, first of all, inaugurations are really not about the president. The inaugurations are about the great legacy and history of St. Ben's and St. John's, about our missions, and about how important and relevant they are today. It's an opportunity for us to come together and think about the future. And we did that in great fashion in late September. A really hardworking team put together a week's worth of activities. And the highlights, there were so many. I know the medallion hunt
was very popular.
We're going to bring that back every year now. That's been decided.
You heard it here first.
That's
folks.
right. So get ready for the second medallion hunt next year.
It's really fun.
But there were all sorts of activities designed to engage the whole community in a variety of ways. One of the first activities was a really fun activity at Milk and Honey, where our faculty got a chance to show off their collaborative research that they do with students and community partners. And I thought that was a great way to start.
And for those who don't know where Milk and Honey is, it's actually a nationally recognized cidery that's in St. Joe, kind of out towards Kramer Lake, in between the 2 campuses.
It was a great opportunity to have the faculty share a bit about their pedagogy, what it means to take their intellectual content out into the community. And we had community partners there too,
Which is
to kind
great.
of see and observe. And so that was a great way to start with a focus on our educational experience. I think a couple of more special moments were at Sacred Heart Chapel when we had Mass to get things started. My family was there. My mom and Carol's mom and dad brought the gifts. That was really pretty special. And then, of course, the inauguration itself was pretty special. I had some private college presidents pull me aside the next Monday at a private college presidents retreat. And they said that not all presidents get a standing ovation at their inauguration, but Brian, you had 2 before you spoke because the students and staff, in fact, were so excited for the event. But that was certainly fun. And of course, it ended with a fishing contest on Lake Sag. And while I participated, I did not make any entries so the students could get all the prizes. But it was a week full of activities and just a ton of fun. And really a week to remember for sure.
It really was. You did talk about the students and the standing ovations. One of the really cool things for those, and I encourage folks to watch it online. It is available. But actually having all the student clubs and teams walk in individually was really cool, and having all the faculty and staff, kind of cheer them on as they went in. So that was what we were doing outside as we were sort of lined up in regalia. It was very, very cool, and just a really fun celebration.
Yeah, it was a beautiful day, and I remember standing when the whole procession was lining up, and the sun was out, and there was a little breeze, and everyone was lined up.
Yeah.
Students were in their groups, faculty were there, and full number of staff were there, trustees, and the bells rang for 5 minutes before. The monastics were chanting as people were coming in. It was just, all the pageantry, but most importantly, the engage in the community and celebrating these two great institutions and what we can imagine about the future. Our theme was Together We Flourish. And that was a true together moment for St. Ben's and St. John's.
It's fun. And I'd also like to point out that Brian's record as a volleyball coach at the College of St. Benedict is now 1-0.
That's right. On inauguration week, we had guest coach opportunity. And I thought I did pretty well that night.
Yeah, you were very celebratory, and I think you
highly
provided
motivational,
some really good insight for the team. Yeah, they were great. So you're welcome. I don't speak for Nicole, but welcome back anytime.
It's great to be back.
Great.
Can I just interject by saying I cannot just wait to say this, but once again, we're celebrating another national championship for Fiona Smith, who won the NCAA national race championship cross country.
Yeah.
And she broke the first woman to ever break the 20-minute barrier. And it was 19.
19.
She won by a minute.
It was amazing.
Kudos to Fiona. She still has indoor track and outdoor track
and amazing things ahead of her. I mean, really, she is quite remarkable. And we just really saw what I've also been really excited about is actually the entire kind of greater St. Cloud community's been celebrating with us the number of people who've just said how amazing, that's so great, wanting to know more about her and more about sort of what we're doing. And kudos to Robin for just her coaching. Yeah, it's really, really good.
It's a
amazing.
Great story. It's
awesome.
A great story.
Awesome. We celebrate her. We'll celebrate her all the time.
Go Bennies.
Go Bennies. So you have been president now of both St. Ben's and St. John's for just over a year and kind of almost a half, not quite. And you've been working steadily to help the community truly understand the remarkable new governance structure and leadership structure that we call strong integration. Can you remind us all again what that is and what it looks like now in practice, a year and a half into your tenure?
Yeah, it's I spent a lot of time talking about strong integration to lots of audiences, and I can tell you that it's powerful, it's interesting, it's innovative. There's nothing like it in American education. And I was in a conversation with a colleague president just the other day, really intrigued by what it is. Campuses across the country are starting to ask, what is this thing that you're doing? It's a ecosystem-wide movement to be more nimble, adaptive, and responsive. And as we confront the headwinds of American education, the monastics and the boards decided that this is one way to do that. And so the thesis is, how do we celebrate St. Ben's and St. John's unapologetically, their distinctiveness, while also taking advantage of what we call strong integration. And it's governance, structure, leadership, as well as program and experience for students. So at the governance level, it's instead of 2 separate boards of trustees with 45 people each, we have 44 people that are trustees for both boards. Instead of 2 presidents, we have 1. Instead of 2 leadership teams, we have 1 leadership team with all the senior leaders serving their function for both campuses, with just a few exceptions. But I'd say more importantly, it's about creating an increasingly more sophisticated experience for students and doing it more cost effectively, in more strategic ways, allowing us to be more nimble and adaptive as we respond to the headwinds we're facing. And there's been so much that we've been doing, it's hard to keep track of. I would say every day, a new iteration of strong integration is emerging. Some people are describing it as done, and I want to be clear, we're just beginning. We're just beginning. There's so much more we can do, but we've hired the leadership. We've moved the governance into place, and it's really taking hold. It's making a difference. We're just rolled out our first jointly built strategic plan as a new entity, and we're at every turn we're facing a lot of firsts around strong integration. Students are finding ways to collaborate to enhance the student experience in ways that are really quite compelling. It's fun to watch the 2 student governments maintain their own identity, their own role and contribution for women leaders and men leaders, but also the collaboration that they are modeling is also pretty impressive. And we have a lot more to do. Our strategic plan, which we'll talk about in a little bit, includes things like joint campus master planning. We're going to be advancing more joint engaged philanthropy and fundraising activities. So many ways that we can think about finding more synergies and more effective educational delivery of instruction.
It's great. There's a lot more to do. And I think that's, you kind of touched on this, but I think if you want to share just a little bit, I know there's a lot more to say, but kind of what are some of the new developments under strong integration that alumni, parents, and friends might not know about yet, but are sort of on the horizon or have happened? Again, so much of what we're doing is sort of internal that, you know, really you've got to be either paying very close attention or have access to things that people might not see.
Yeah, I would say some of the things that parents and families, I think, are paying attention to and it's important to and I know this is a topic that there may be questions that will come in on around our marketing and branding work. This is a byproduct of being more closely aligned. We need to go to market with a single message that's unified and is affirming of both institutions and demonstrating what we're doing together. So there's been a lot of work on understanding our position in the marketplace, and so that we can be more clear and compelling to families on things like affordability, on things like our amazing outcomes that we're producing. So I think how we talk about ourselves, how we engage ourselves, we're going to be rolling out a new website that we hope to have complete this summer.
Yep, can't wait.
So that's another byproduct of identifying ways that we can be more effective together. And the list is, I think, quite significant. Ways that families, I think, will find interesting as we go forward is as we do more program development. Of course, that's all about together. And there's just, for me, it's just beginning what's possible. And again, it is very internal, but it's also about how we present ourselves to the world. And I think that's where families and prospective students really engage. And alums, of course, they're paying attention to all that we're doing. And so I think it all matters to alums.
Yeah. So we've been on a path of change that's robust and pretty fast paced. So how have you been helping students, faculty, and staff manage this change?
Well, I think when you're engaged in what I call ecosystem-wide change, and that's both campuses, from governance to leadership to experience, it can be a lot for a community. And so I think things that help the change happen is engaging people in the process. So we've been heavily engaging faculty, staff, students, constituents, alums in the strategic planning process in significant ways. We're doing more communication, and we can do even more, sharing information with folks. But most importantly, we're tending to the relationships, tending to community, trying to find ways. And that's one of the real powerful outcomes of the inauguration, is that we had a week of a lot of community engagement, a lot of opportunities for us to celebrate and to be connected. So I think part of what we need to keep doing is paying attention to the individuals in the change, the relationships in the change, lots of communication, lots of paying attention. When you're considering change in such a comprehensive way, you also have to hold up the things we're doing well. And so you've heard me talk about the appreciative inquiry approach. Working for the future from a position of strength, which is what we're in, working for the future and change around our strengths, our great assets. And there's so much to say about that. And I think it's important for us to keep having fun too. So one of the fun things of last year is that Carol and I hosted thousands of people at the house. I mean, it started out, hundreds, and I think we had almost 3,000 people through the house. We invited all faculty, new faculty, continuing faculty, many groups of staff, from housekeeping to food service to grounds crew to leadership team, the student senates. And in those interactions, that social time together, we're building community, we're tending to each other, we're listening to each other, and you can never go wrong by leaning into the Benedict values. Listening. I had an amazing experience this morning. I got together on a Zoom with 5 Benny alums who came together around one of Mary Hinton's initiatives becoming community. And that initiative at the onset of COVID was inviting people into conversation. And this group of 5 Bennies across maybe 25 years.
Across the, I know who you speak.
And they've been getting together every Wednesday morning to take a pause and to engage each other in a really powerful way, thinking about contemplation, thinking about the world and their challenges and their joys and their hopes and dreams. I was invited into that this morning for an hour, and just a stunning example of what I think we should aspire to do as a college and a university, is take that time for each other and be present. And this is so important coming out of COVID as well. We see it in our students, this epidemic of loneliness and isolation. We need to lean back into our sense of community coming out of COVID, and it also helps us navigate the change. Being together, working on this together, and really celebrating all the excitement and the challenges, and naming those challenges and really tackling them head on. It's been quite an experience in that regard, and an experience you can see having an impact.
And Sister Karen Rose was our guest on the last episode, and when I asked sort of about that, we talked about a lot about the Benedictine community and what it is to truly live in community. And it isn't easy. As you said, there are challenges in this, but it is that intentionality. I think it's why sometimes people take for granted all of our mission traditions. We've talked about that a lot, right? Like it's very easy to throw whichever one doesn't feel right to you kind of out when you don't like it, but they all have such value and there's a real purpose. And I realize, like, for not every higher education experience needs to be residential, but I do think a Benedictine one does.
Right.
Because it is that living with one another in community that is very specifically Benedictine. There are other religious communities who also have the same value, but to do it the way Benedictines do is intentional. And our students get a little bit of an experience of that. And at that time and in that way. And I love that alums are finding a way to do that intentional community, in that way.
I think you're spot on with that, Heather. And I also believe that's one of the most powerful drivers of the Benny Johnny network and that love of place. When you're together and you're really living in that way, in community for the common good and each other's flourishing, it changes how you think and feel about the world and yourself. And this morning, to have that group of Bennies share that experience with me was just a real gift. But it's that kind of connecting that I think needs to continue to characterize how we navigate the headwinds we're facing, and how we, amplify the best of what we believe in here through the strong integration and the strategic plan, for sure.
So, as you mentioned, you said, like, some people think that strong integration's over and we've got lots to navigate. So what are some of the things that are, kind of on the strategic, the strong integration sort of to-do list that have yet to be completed? And do you have a timeline for those? And maybe are there some things that weren't initially on the list that, might be on the list now?
Well, one thing that's on the list is we're in the middle, as you know, in a study looking at institutional advancement, both fundraising and alumni engagement at St. Ben's and St. John's. And we're exploring the relationship to really highly functioning units that are producing. Last year, we produced a record of the most cash in the door for each institution, therefore combined. And I was zigzagging the country, meeting Benny's and Johnny's, lost track of how many places and how many people we met. But our goal in this review is to see, both by way of structure and strategy, how can we imagine a next level engagement with our alums? And then how can we move our collective effort to next level of philanthropy? We can talk about that in lots of detail if you like. But
always.
I know you love talking about it. But it's a great example of strong integration, I believe, because in this study, in this review, we're trying to discover, how do we celebrate unapologetically what's really special and unique of how we engage Bennies? and how we engage Johnnies in the alum experience, and how do we engage them in philanthropy. And two great operations, 6 miles apart, each featuring their own way of doing that work. How do we imagine it in a more collaborative approach that allows us to meet the needs of our alums more fully and to engage more fully in the needs of the institution as we go forward? And our goal is to see if we can't ask of ourselves some really bold questions. And that is, if we were able to produce this level of alum engagement, which is, I think, one of our greatest assets, the affinity factor for St. Ben's is off the charts. And the same is true for St. John's. That's one of our greatest assets. How do we engage them? In what ways do they want to be engaged over the life cycle of an alum's experience? And could we imagine a joint campaign that would support our joint interests? That would be, is it possible to imagine one of $500 million? Is it possible to imagine an endowment twice the size of the one we have now? Yes, it is. The question is, how long will it take us to do that? And the reason this is important is because we want to resource these two beautiful places in ways that are commensurate with the outcomes we're producing and what the Bennies and Johnnies of the future and what the world needs. So that's a complex conversation. And we're, any day now, we're going to get a draft report on going forward. And then we'll take some time to think that through. That's a project that isn't going to get rushed, but we're going to move at a smart pace to meet that. That's a really important one. I mentioned earlier, campus master planning.
Right.
For the first time, we want to look at both the physical assets of both campuses and imagine the future together, taking advantage of strengths and optimizing for the environment, for repurposing facilities and for meeting the needs of students, and thinking long-term together. That's a big part of strong integration. We have a lot of administrative opportunities to consider consolidation or looking at shared services across the two campuses. Lots of opportunities there. There's all sorts of things that Kara Kolnitz, our COO, is imagining about how we purchase energy, how we think about procurement, how we think about auxiliary services. And of course, everything that is already kind of gone through the strong integration filter is continuing to go through it. So at every opportunity, we're asking ourselves, if we've done it this way and that way, is one of those better? Or is there a third way to do it better for students? And I would also say that this is a continuous improvement process. And so we're going to constantly ask ourselves, is this still the best way to do this for students? Is this still the best way to do this to express our mission and to really be thinking about sustainable growth and sustainability for these institutions? So for me, the list of what's possible with strong integration is really unlimited. And our faculty have been combined, as it were, for over 40 years. And so that's a part of the enterprise that's been benefiting from a close collaboration for a long time. So we have things to learn from them. But they too are imagining more and more effective ways on how we can think in a more shared, integrated way.
Well, and I think I think one of the things that you talk about is sort of how can we better serve our students? And I think that's what's exciting about the possibilities, how we can we better serve our alums. So instead of doing two of a thing, we can do one thing that serves those two populations better, and maybe then do another thing also that serves those two populations better. And I think that's where in the faculty, we didn't have two philosophy departments. We had one philosophy department. And then that having one philosophy department allowed us to maybe bring on a psychology department or a different one, right? Or not something else, so that our students were able to get more. You know, you came to an intimate liberal arts, residential liberal arts, Catholic Benedictine institution and got a little bit more for your opportunity because we were able to do that differently. And I think that's some of the lessons that we can also really think about too. And it's not that we're going to shove everything together. We say that all the time. It's that we could actually do like different, more intentional programming that is, you know, really better serving our alums for a lifetime.
I've been speaking of saying things we've said over and over. I'll say this again, is that it's one of the lines in the inauguration that got a rousing applause when I said that it's neither a merger, nor is it a precursor to a merger, nor is it an exercise in symmetry.
Right.
In fact, there are things in what we call the joint operating agreement that are defined as separate. And there's some of the things that we believe help define what's distinctive about these places. And I'll just give you a really specific example. Student senates are separate.
Yep.
Because that gives us more than almost 24 leadership opportunities at St. John's and at St. Ben's. And we believe that student senates are leading and shaping and creating opportunities that are uniquely suited to the leadership needs of women and men.
Right.
So there's lots of examples where these things of the empowerment of women requires this.
Right.
And developing principled men and empowered men with a healthy masculinity requires this. And so there are things that are distinctive that will remain separate. And yet every other turn, we're trying to really leverage what's in the best interest of our students and our missions and our healthy, sustainable, vibrant future.
Absolutely. So I'm going to switch gears just a little bit. Last year, you were laser focused on enrollment and reversing the negative enrollment trends at St. Ben's and St. John's. What can you tell us about enrollment at St. Ben's and St. John's this year?
Well, I'm really proud of our first phase of successes that we've had. And there's lots of dimensions to this, but I'll try and keep this brief.
You've got a little time, you're good.
Okay, what I'd say is that we're really examining every possible way of doing things in a more contemporary way. We've had a long history of successful, smart admissions work. And at the same time, our competition has been investing in certain elements of the enrollment strategy that we have not been. And I mentioned earlier this idea of brand and marketing communication. We're focusing a lot on that, and from a broad institutional perspective, but also from a recruitment marketing perspective. We're moving as aggressively as we can to what I call an omni-channel approach to telling our story. We want to, as I've said in the past, want to move away from the monikers and get more deeply into attributes and lived experience, and student narratives and outcomes. We're also trying to modernize how we do the search for names and prospects. And so we've been engaging a third party and helping to think about how we build a more robust top of funnel. And that's the number of applications and inquiries we have. And then Corey Piper, our new Dean of Admission, who just celebrated her first anniversary last month. She's been working with an absolutely stunning admissions team, what we call mid-funnel down. So once they've applied, the way they interact with the admissions team, the faculty and the staff, the campus visit, and how they know us and experience us, that richness and that experience is really important. So we're investing time and energy there. And then, of course, there's so much more that we can do, even still, about a lot of schools for years have been kind of finishing their enrollment cycle May 1st. But with all the volatility in the marketplace and things like the FAFSA, which is the form families use to measure their financial need, because of some changes at the federal level there, the FAFSA is going to be available to families later.
Okay.
And so that's going to change the importance of us recruiting well past May 1st. And so Corey and team have been working really hard on how we just keep recruiting students all the way through the spring and into the summer. And so this past year, the first few months of that effort really, I've got a light blinking, but that's okay.
Okay.
Yeah. It's Hollywood. This is some really exciting stuff.
Just making sure where nobody's getting a stroke. But if you see flashing, that's what this is.
If there's any sparks of flame, we'll deal with it. So really pleased to say that the first 6 or 8 months of that work has really positioned us particularly well at St. Ben's. We had a goal of, last year we ended with 323 first-year students. We had a goal of 340, and we finished closer to 390. It was 385. And at St. John's, we had a goal of 385 for new first-year students. And we have a little bit short of that, but we had more transfer students at St. John's.
Right.
So overall, I'm very proud to report that we exceeded our total enrollment goal by about a dozen students. And so everyone's in a better mood when you exceed your enrollment goal. And just yesterday, Kara Coleman was giving me an update on our plans for next year. And both of those enrollment goals for next year will be about the same or a little bit higher than they were this last year. We're trying to work our way back to first year classes that are over 400. We're going to really chase that 400 number next year. And our goal is in the next couple of years to get back to 420 for both campuses. And we're also seeing a wonderful little bounce with international students. So between transfer students, international students, we had another great year with our wonderful program with the Bahamas. We had, I think it was 21 students, new students from the Bahamas. So really very proud of the work that we're doing. And Corey and her team will continue to produce results. She'll have a full year plus now with an enrollment cycle for this next class. But we continue to maintain the same high academic standards, the same focus on really recruiting diverse, talented, socioeconomically diverse class as well. So feel really good about the growth of the enrollment funnel and the results. And I should also say that as it relates to our School of Theology, St. John's, we also had a good year there, 152 total students there. And we also continue to have a really strong, our graduate nursing program continues to really be strong at St. Ben's as well. So overall, we had over 3,100 students, 3,200 students when you include graduate students. And we'd like to get that undergraduate enrollment, back closer to 2,950. It's at 2,850. We want to get it back to 2,950. And we also had a pretty good year with retention. St. Ben's was, again, up close to 90%. St. John's had a little bit of a drop, about 83% first year retention. So all told, I'd say really great performance. But we are expecting more next year, and we're being really aggressive about it. We're enrollment driven with our revenue. Some folks say tuition and fee driven, but the better, more accurate way is enrollment driven. About 82% of our revenue is enrollment driven. And so it's really important to not stabilize, but to grow that back and regain some of the market share in Minnesota that we've lost in the last 10 years.
And that's not an easy feat either. I think I always want to make sure that we put the context of a conversation about our own enrollment in a larger, nationwide conversation about just the demography. So if you want to just give just a tiny bit of this is, we're in a situation where we know, there were however many children were born in the state of Minnesota and across the country 18 years ago impacts who's available to us, really, given the traditional nature of our students.
One of the major headwinds that two of the major headwinds we're facing have to do with demographics. And so based on birth rates alone, there's a declining number of high school graduates, and it's going to be a sharper drop in 2 years before it returns, some 10 years later. But the Great Recession slowed down the birth rates, and now that's coming to roost now. It's also true that demographics are not our destiny, because in our narrative, we also lost a share of the Minnesota market over the last 6 to 8 years. So part of our strategy is to regain some market share that we lost. So we're rebuilding at a time that demographics are turning down. And it's reasonable, it's strategic. And our sense is that when you have a value proposition that's producing these kinds of results, when you have a more competitive spend on paid advertising and marketing, and the recruitment strategy is more sophisticated, we know we can regain some of the market. The second big headwind are questions of affordability. In some of the research that we've been doing this last year and a half, the single most common and number one barrier to enrollment and success from new students at both institutions and prospective parents and alums and faculty and staff is real and perceived affordability. And this has become made more complicated by the fact that Minnesota State Legislature recently passed the North Star program, which is targeted for public colleges only, for families with income of between $60,000 and $80,000. It's a piece of legislation that has some real flaws to it in terms of its likelihood of being successful, but it's another part of the headwinds around questions of affordability.
Right.
So we're working really hard on the affordability questions. I mentioned the FAFSA changes. That's another headwind that's intensifying these challenges. But we're up to this challenge.
We are.
And we've got a very sophisticated strategy in play, and early indications are a good success, and I'm expecting more to follow.
So one of the most ambitious undertakings that you've launched is fast-tracking a strategic plan here at St. Ben's and St. John's. You went on a very ambitious tour that you mentioned earlier to collect input from alums and donors and friends, and you hosted listening sessions here on campus for faculty, staff, and students. You listened to literally thousands of people. You compiled thousands of data points from existing relevant research and information. So let's talk about this. Why was it important to do this fast, and what exactly did you need to include to do it well?
Yeah, that is a loaded question.
It is a very big question.
I would say that a lot of people have heard us talk about this, and that is we're trying to create, and we have, a planning process and a plan that are both reflective of our intentions around being more nimble, adaptive, and responsive. And so that's one of the main reasons for strong integration is to be more nimble and adaptive to the headwinds we're facing. So our plan, our strategy has to be built. The pedagogy has to be more nimble, adaptive, and so does the plan itself. And so we set out on a planning effort that was different than what we've done before. Shorter time horizon, shorter planning periods, fewer initiatives, more focused. Instead of 70 or 80 initiatives, 13. Instead of building the plan and then getting the funding to fund it all at once, fund it as you go. The one thing we did not want to compromise, and we didn't, and that is the greatest attribute of higher education. I've been teasing ourselves for a long time that liberal arts colleges are not known for being nimble. The general education programs usually last 30 years, and it takes 10 years to change them. And the Catholic Church has a change cycle of 200 to 300 years. And the Benedictines, they've got a life history of almost 1,600 years. So we're not known for being nimble and adaptive. So our planning processes are typically 2 or 3 years to build it, take a year and a half to do discovery. They're just slower. But the greatest asset of American higher education strategic planning is the consultative constituency engagement and process. And so we wanted to involve as many people as we can to honor that great tradition, and believing and knowing that when you involve the people affected by change, the ideas will be better, and they're more likely to be well implemented and sustained over time. So we made great efforts to engage all constituents from across the country, alums, monastics, community partners, lots of engagement. And so that produced a lot of data. And so we spent last fall in our readiness phase tackling the more emergent issues that didn't need a planning process. We spent the spring semester doing that intense discovery and generation of data. We spent the summer synthesizing all that data and all that information, compiling it, sorting it, trying to make sense of it, looking for themes. And then we drafted some strategic directions, broadly speaking, with some initial sets of initiatives. We brought that back to the community, revisited it, refined it, and then we sent a list of initiatives back out to the community to help them prioritize them, took that back, and then played it out with monastics, with some engagement with them and the board committees and the full board in October. And this past October, the board offered a reaffirmation of our institutional mission and vision statements and a directional endorsement of the strategic directions in the first phase of initiatives. And so that's a lot. Speed was important because we want to move at a better pace.
Right.
And we want a plan that actually is not carved in granite,
Right.
but rather flexible. And so we're committing to taking the best ideas, not everybody's best idea, but the set of ideas we think will most likely move us forward
Right.
in really meaningful, sustainable ways, and try those out. And then as we go, refine them and add more ideas and keep building the plan as we go. So it's a different approach, and it's really exciting, and it's really fun to watch it come together. And our next piece of work is around incorporating the board feedback, and then building a communication plan to share it broadly with alums, students, faculty, staff. Tomorrow there's a meeting with the faculty to share an update with them. We have a staff sharing and engaging coming up. So in the weeks to come, the months to come, alums are going to be engaged. We're beginning the call for participation in the invitation to participate in the initiatives and the various steering groups. So it's really exciting to watch it come together.
Well, that's great. I'm sure folks will be really excited to hear more and ongoing. And we promise to share more and more ongoing. So just as a little bit of a preview, what do you think is, and not just about the process, but is there anything that's really bold and innovative about this plan, in your opinion? And most of what you said, just even the way we've done it, is very innovative. But is there anything that really kind of excites you about it?
Yeah, I think you have to put a time limit on me, Heather, because I'm pretty excited about what we're talking about here. But there's 3 strategic directions, and maybe I could just pick a couple things out of each of the 3.
Maybe one out of each of the 3.
One out of each of the 3. Okay, so 3 of the ideas I think are most bold.
Perfect.
We have a strategic direction we call mission practice, and mission practice includes engaging the community in a deeper understanding of who we are in our Catholic, Benedictine, liberal arts, residential, our history as a women's college, our history as a men's university, these mission traditions, engaging us in really intense deepening of our understanding of those constructs, as well as DEIJ. So one of the bold things about this plan is it puts in direct harmony and relationship the constructs of our mission tradition with DEIJ. And that intersectionality is powerful because it's systems work. And this strategic direction, what's bold about it is that bringing together of our mission traditions and DEIJ, but also the bringing together of this for our own understanding, but more importantly, engaging partnerships. So we're going to have some bold partnerships that are going to come out of this, and this bringing together the essence of who we are in more explicit, direct ways, I think is pretty powerful. In the student experience strategic direction, I think what's most bold in that area is the very first initiative around academic innovation. And that's specifically about new program development that is a direct byproduct of our mission and our faculty expertise and the demands and needs of the market and our students. We're also launching in that initiative a series of different centers that we're exploring around the environment and sustainability, around arts, liberal arts and humanities, around principled and ethical business and leadership, and health, with a public health focus that's going to have us doing much more than we've already done around health, and particularly around public health. That area of the student experience, I think, is bold. We also are exploring building a residence life and student life experience around the Benedictine values. I think that's a pretty bold and compelling idea. And then in the third strategic direction, which is operational and financial excellence, there's can I do 2?
Okay. Yeah.
I'll try 2. I'll be brief. One that I think is really bold, I mentioned before, is a shared campus master planning process. The other one that's bold has to do with what we were talking earlier about philanthropy. And our outcomes, about half of the most cherished outcomes we have are in the top 50 national liberal arts colleges. The other half of the outcomes fall more about where we're ranked, 75th to 100th Both institutions are ranked right around 75. The top 50 liberal arts colleges have an average endowment of between $800 million and $1 billion. Our combined endowments are about $400 million. So the question we have that's bold is, can we imagine what it would be for our students and our faculty and our lived experience if we could, when we double our endowment? Could we imagine taking the question of affordability off the table for families, making available to making a St. Ben St. John's education available to 200 to 300 more first-year students a year than we're currently doing? Could we imagine that kind of a significant transformational change? Yes, we can imagine that. Right. What would it take to do that? Those are some of the things that I think make things that we've never done here before, and they make them bold for us, but they're also bold in the context of American education that's under siege right now with really intense headwinds. So there's a lot, it's hard for, not a fair question to pull out 3 things that are bold. So I had to do 4.
Okay, fair enough. I think you did 5 because we did
5.
2 in the student experience, but that's okay. You get to do that.
Can't believe you counted. I thought I snuck one in on you.
No, you did not. You can't ever get anything past me. So can you, so as we're rolling this out, how can our alums, parents, friends help us achieve this plan?
Yeah. Well, one of the features of this plan that I think is really stunning is there are so many ways to connect, so many ways to engage. So I would say the question of alumni engagement has more to do with how does that alum or that parent, that student want to be engaged? Mm-hmm. Can you help us tell the story of the power of a St. Ben's education? Can you help us with the recruitment side of things? Maybe you're in a position to help us think about offering more internships. Maybe, one of the things we want to do in the strategic plan, this number 6, is to create more equitable access to high impact practices. So maybe there's a mentoring piece that you could do. Maybe there's an endowed scholarship you want to start. Maybe you want to participate in our rebuilding of the performing arts program. What are those things that alums want to be engaged with? Let's find those connections, kind of meet them where their interests are, because graduates, their needs for engagement change over time. So we have to be ready to meet them where they are and engage them. But we need them to help tell the story. We need them to help us imagine what the world needs for our students. If they're in a particular field and they have insight, or if we have a particular project that's engaging alums in the actual project, let's draw them in. So there's lots of ways that we can engage alums and parents and students.
That's great. So I'm gonna just check in. All right. I'm gonna ask at least one more question before we go to any audience questions here. So we haven't really talked much. We've talked about a little bit about students, but not necessarily as much about what they're accomplishing. So you talked a little bit about about sort of the general impact that we can have for students, but what really inspires you about our bennies?
Well, if you haven't been on campus, you haven't hung around with college students recently, I find this generation of students, bennies and johnnies, to be really quite inspiring.
I do too.
They offer so much hope for us. And just hearing their story, their internship this summer that opened up this possibility or the other. The fact that we have the largest delegation of any college in the world at the International Climate Gathering in Dubai. Watching students tell me about how excited they are to go to Dubai, to be a part of this iconic global gathering around the environment. Talking with met with a student today, she's balancing all these different opportunities. She's got multiple internships. Multiple internships happening at the same time. Yeah. The excitement they have when they're moving into the next phase of their nursing curriculum. Just the energy and the life. The other day, yesterday we had the Christmas tree lighting, and just watching them be so joyful together, and just watching them compete on the athletic field, compete in the classroom. Of course, Jervon Sands, St. John's, recent grad, a Rhodes Scholar.
Now we have four
Now we have
from
four.
St. Ben's and
Yeah.
St. John's.
Yeah,
which
it's
is
just
incredible.
really another great statement about the educational experience at St. Ben's and St. John's. And just at every turn. And these are students that are carrying a lot. You know, they're bringing a really rich life history. You know, they're bringing admissions applications with several hundred hours of volunteers experience and great aspirations to be teachers, to be volunteers, to be lawyers, to be doctors. So it's just amazing every day to watch their story unfold, to watch their flourishing take hold, to watch them struggle. You know, this is the fastest 2 weeks of the year.
Right.
From Thanksgiving to Christmas break. And the joy they bring to it is just quite inspiring. One other thing that I could share real quickly is that as a part of the inauguration, we talked a lot about the hexagon and the honeycomb as a symbol of community. And we asked students to share in writing, ask new students and continuing students, what are they going to bring to the community this year? And the things that they wrote down, their dreams for their first year at St. Ben's, where they want to be in 4 years, their willingness to support each other, to recognize the dignity of the human person, the person sitting across from them, walking with them in difficult times. The student I met today, her friend was down in Mary Commons waiting to give her a ride back to St. John's to stop and get something and come back. Just the way they model community and the way they model these values is just a pure blessing to be a part of it, to witness it.
That's great. So I think it's a good place to pause and just see if we have any questions from our audience tonight. Lisa?
We do have a question. This is from Mary from the class of 1994. She asks, changing an approach to a strategic planning process can be like poking a bear sometimes. How are you helping the community find willingness, if not comfort, in moving through this process more nimbly, quickly, and strategically?
That, Mary, is a great question. In addition to the beautifully framed question, we hadn't gone through strategic planning since 2015. So not only were we introducing a new process that was faster than the community was used to, we hadn't exercised those strategic planning muscles for a few years. So I think a couple of things that we've been doing is trying to acknowledge the real strength and the quality and the great assets of the place. And that's, I mentioned this appreciative inquiry approach, really affirming the incredible things that are already in place and building from those. High levels of involvement and engagement are really important. Lots of communication, really important. Feedback loops, bringing back iterations of reflecting back what we heard the community say. And I was been kind of doing it in a lighthearted way. Strategic planning sometimes gets overly complicated because there's a lot riding on it.
Right.
But it's really also keeping it simple. We know through years and years of research, it's better to have a plan than to not have a plan.
Right.
If you're going to have a plan, you should fund it. And if you're going to fund it, you should measure the results.
Yeah.
And you should also just engage people in the process.
And celebrate when you do
And-
things. Let people know that we succeeded.
Hit a milestone
Right.
and celebrate that, and then hit the next one. The power of strategic planning and engaging community is really what it's all about. And so we have to really genuinely feel good about it. It's also hard because this is not a collection of everybody's best idea.
Right.
We generated over 2,000 different ideas. And many of them were operational things that we said, hey, look, we're going to do this. We're just going to do it. It doesn't need to be in the plan. But we winnowed it down to 13 main initiatives. So I think it's going to be important for us to also look back and say, hey, these ideas didn't make it into the strategic plan, but they're being done.
Right.
And so just looping back around And I think that celebrating piece is really going to be important.
Yeah. So what are you most excited about for the next 6 months?
The next 6 months.
Yeah. So in the rest of maybe 7. Let's go to the end of the fiscal year. So
Well, by the end of the fiscal year, we will have once again demonstrated amazing financial prowess and finished another fiscal year. I'm going to project it right now with 2 unmodified audited financial performances.
Okay.
We're also going to be looking at another year where we make our enrollment goal. And we will also, a better part of those initiatives in the strategic plan will be launched and underway. So I think we're going to feel a lot of momentum. Another little teaser that I can put out there with this crowd, because this is a loyal fan base here. We're going to also be rolling out a new brand, a new identity, and new messaging. And that's going to be 7 months from now. That's going to be out. The new website, we're hoping to be done by the end of the fiscal year.
Yep. We need to make sure the current one lasts through the end of the fiscal year.
Yeah, well,
So,
we can make that happen. So I think in 6 to 7 months, we're gonna be seeing and feeling a lot of the progress and
Right.
momentum that we're just now talking about.
Right.
Because this plan is built to move at a pace.
So just one last question. We have one last question. All right. So it's clear you're no short on dreams and vision, and it's very clear that they're tied to the mission and vision and our beloved Benedictine values. So what do you tell people who struggle to feel connected to that vision or who don't feel inspired? So how do you get people as enthusiastic as you are about this?
Well, that's a great question. First of all, it breaks my heart when I find out that there's an alum who is not in love with this place. It really truly does, because I see the power of it. I see the beauty of it, and I also see the yet untapped potential of it. But what I'd say to that person or persons is that the most important role of a college president is not to make the change happen. The most important role I have is to help create conditions for that vision and that change to happen. And the vision that we're talking about is not mine. The vision we're talking about is a reflection of what the community has said. So if we're not reflecting well enough your vision for us, tell us what that is. Let us better understand what would excite you. And the group that I referenced at the beginning, this group of 5 that have been getting together every Wednesday, part of their story, the genesis of at least one of their members, is that prior to the launching of Becoming Community, the invitation for these book group discussions, she didn't feel connected. That vision that Mary Hinton had about becoming community opened up a possibility at this point in time in that woman's life that changed her life. And the 5 of them together have this beautiful community that they're building. So it happens in lots of ways. So let's be open to connecting and reconnecting. And if you're not feeling that connection, share that with us and give us a chance to meet your needs, know your needs, and then connect you.
And it's why it's becoming, because we are always becoming that kind of community. May we be that for everyone too. So thank you for taking an hour of your time to chat with us, Brian. I know our virtual audience appreciates the opportunity to hear from you directly and loves hearing some insider information about campus that they wouldn't get to hear anywhere else. So thank you so much for joining us. Audience, thank you too for joining us tonight. St. Ben's at Home will be back with new episodes in the spring. Enjoy the holiday season. Merry Christmas and Happy New Year to all of you. Have a very good night, everyone. And now here's our last word from Lisa Miller.
Thank you again, President Bruess and Heather, for your time this evening. Audience, you can share additional questions or comments on tonight's episode through the evaluation form that will be emailed to you from the Alumni Relations Office. So again, this concludes tonight's episode, and we look forward to seeing you in the spring.